Hi, everybody. How you doing? Can you hear me okay? All right, how you doing today? Oh, no, that's not enough energy. For Saturday morning in Orlando, that will not cut it, folks. How's everybody doing today? It's getting better. Got a little better. All right, we'll see by the end where we are. Before I introduce things, I'm going to play a 1-minute video for you. And it kind of sets the tone of what we're going to talk about.
We are all students of leadership. Our objective is we develop training material that blends inspiring leader concepts with adventures. In our one-day adventure, we spend the first half of the day working with horses, understanding how to make accommodations for the way in which that horse operates. In the afternoon, we start to transition that into how people operate to drive real results. So welcome to your leadership adventure.
Never been on a horse before.
It was different than any kind of leadership training I've ever had before.
It made me personally think about my role as a leader.
We really have seen the best results by having them step out of their comfort zone. The learning takes place faster. They tend to retain more.
We want to work together here.
That's the adventure of becoming a more inspiring leader, and that's what we're all about here at Leadership Adventures.
So I share that with you for a couple reasons. One is it was really the premise of building equine-assisted leadership development over the last couple of years, and I'll tell you a little bit more about that as we go through. But it also is on the thumb drive. So if you came by our booth, number 102, and you took a little wooden thumb drive, which we have plenty, so if you haven't, please do that because there's a lot of good storage space on it. That video is also on there, so it helps to just kind of explain a little bit of what we're doing. So here's our plan for today. Now, I will tell you up front that I'm not always great at sticking to the plan. So we're going to try to keep the questions to the end. But if you have a question, at least write it down, and let's try to make sure we get to it. Certainly, we're here all day, so we can answer questions all day outside of this venue, but wanted to make sure that I covered that. So we're going to try to allow 15 minutes at the end. We're going to talk about equine-assisted leadership development, some of the courses that are part of it, why we introduced this, and what it means to actual centers where we're doing it. And I'll get into more of that in a minute. Plus, there's a bonus. At the end of this session, you're going to get a really cool bonus. I'm going to talk to you about the top 2 secrets of becoming an inspiring leader. They're going to be tailored and customized to you. So that's going to be a neat little takeaway. Okay, so without further ado, I'm Jeff Arnold. That's me having no business being on a horse drive. I think if you look closely, the tags are still on that shirt. But after 20 years in corporate consulting with some of the largest firms around the globe, I decided it made sense to go and drive horses across Colorado. And it was probably very close to in this moment of the picture that you see that Carole, the photographer, took at that time, that actually a lot of the concepts for equine-assisted leadership development started to be put together in my head. I had been doing lots of leadership development around the globe in my various roles, and had also been doing a lot of experiential learning, and I just felt like there were so many things on this horse drive that I went through individually and personally that tied together concepts of leadership that I had either learned or been teaching or seen others do or studying, that there had to be a way to do leadership training that was more experiential using horses and could benefit everybody in a much more significant way. So we began to do a lot of research around that. What are the benefits of experiential learning, and how does it actually make things better than coming to a classroom like this and sitting here listening to somebody talk? And what we found is it's pretty significant, about 30% more retention in terms of concepts by doing, which probably makes sense. If you're in the area of training, which most of you are doing some kind of training or therapy, you know that the hands-on components are really impactful. So that's a little bit of my background summarized in one picture as to how I got to where I'm standing in front of you today. I'd like to introduce Carole Pettito, who's also here.
Howdy, y'all. Thanks for having me. I'm partnering up with Jeff today to let you know that we are a partner center on Eagles Wings, West Virginia, in the Fairmont area. We are very excited about introducing this program in our community and Jeff's going to tell you about how this has helped us and how we're helping others through his Leadership Adventures program. So I'm an executive director at the center, so I help make a lot of the decisions, and I feel this has been a very important decision for us in our journey of developing our center.
Thanks, Carole. And we'll have a little time later where Carole can give you some more insights. So let me tell you first what Leadership Adventures is. Now, I'm not going to go through all the text that you see up here. I'm going to summarize it for you. We basically provide training, coaching, and consulting in areas of leadership development, professional leadership development. So we have a model of building inspiring leaders. We have probably 100 different course titles in there. And our focus is all about building inspiring leaders. If you're familiar with leadership development, inspiring leadership sits in the realm of transformational leadership. So there's about 15 types of leadership that people recognize. Transformational leadership includes inspiring leadership, and we could talk more about that later because it's a whole separate discussion. But inspiring leadership is all about inspiring other people and yourself to be able to accomplish a vision. And it's kind of a unique aspect of leadership development. So that's what we do. We serve everybody from frontline factory workers to at-risk youth to CEOs, come through various programs that we do. And it's been really successful here in the U.S. We've also done some sessions in the Dominican Republic as well. You can read a lot more about that later. This is a little more visual. Some of what you saw in the video, frankly. You know, we developed these one-day workshops in 2016 that we started doing at Path Centers. And they were based on the idea of if we could, in the morning, take people immediately out of their role, whatever their role is. If they're a banker, a baker, whatever they are, they have to take that hat off, and we're going to teach them about horses. And the things we're teaching them about horses are very specifically focused around things they're going to learn in the afternoon about how leading a horse can relate to leading people. So it's a very, we start in the development of these courses, we start with kind of reverse engineering. What are the leadership topics we want to get out? And then we back that into how can we do things with a horse that also parallel that same track. And that's how we design them. So we tell people up front when they come to our workshops that this is not leadership by horseback riding. There are people that do that. That's not us. Our focus is specifically on the top topics that are leadership development topics that are out there, and how those blend in with horse and equine activities. There's a group of us from instructional designers to information developers to equine experts. We have focused on trying to bring the best of it to the actual courses. And so we have folks who have masters of leadership and organizational development, and we have instructional designers. We have some folks from different path centers from Sombrero Ranches in Longmont, Colorado. If you're familiar there, you might know Christy Kramer, one of the trainers, and Brenda Mullins. And so we've really tried to work with folks to make sure that we're covering the topics that are relevant and really how to put them in place with leadership concepts that blend them together. So if I ask you a question, we're going to try to do a little bit of interactive stuff here. If I ask you what is leadership, what would you tell me? It's easy to define that word, right? Go ahead. Someone who can influence others. Wow. I didn't think we'd get there on the first try. But it actually saves me a little time. This might get us back on the plan. Okay, so what is leadership? There's all kinds of ways to define leadership, right? It's a tough word to define. We subscribe to some of the leadership gurus, John Maxwell and others, who define leadership in one word: influence. All leaders have influence. And so one of the things that we like to tell folks when they come and they're standing and working with horses, we say, I don't care how strong you are. We've had these big football players come and, we don't care how strong you are. You can't make this horse do anything. You can't pull it. You can't push it. What you can do is exhibit influence and work with the horse and its influence, and by working together, figure out what that looks like. And by the way, that's how you lead other people. It's through influence. So we subscribe to the definition of leadership as influence. So let me ask you a question. What makes an inspiring leader? Just shout out some answers. Think of somebody in your head who's inspired you in the past. Confidence. Go ahead. Passion. Sorry? Empowering. Vision. Knowledge. They have knowledge of the subject. What else? They're a good communicator. Energy. Say that again. Skills. They have skills. Say that one more time. They lead by example. Thanks. Yeah, so, we all know what an inspiring leader looks like, right? I mean, we've all been there. How about this one? Now, please don't say the name, but think of somebody who in your life, somewhere along the way, exhibited characteristics that were of an uninspiring leader. And by the way, we've all done it, right? We're not saying this is a bad person. We're saying somewhere in something you were involved in, this person exhibited characteristics of what would be considered uninspiring leadership. Not open to new ideas. Self-absorbed, controlling and negative. Sorry, trying to get everything. Say again. Micromanaging, disrespectful, dishonest. Sorry, I couldn't see where you were. Right? So here's the interesting thing about doing this. And literally, we've done this probably close to with 1,000 groups. Those two lists of inspiring and uninspiring, they're the same every time. It's the same words, right? If we had longer, we'd get a longer, more exhaustive list. But those lists are identical. We all know what makes good leadership, what makes bad leadership, what makes us inspired, and what makes us uninspired. So that's the first word of our organization, leadership. So it's important for us to know what that is. Now, what's an adventure? What do you think of when I say adventure? Exciting, different, challenging, spontaneous. And front 3 rows came alive all of a sudden. Like the coffee just kicked in. Okay. All right, so that's okay. What makes a good adventure? Challenge, fun, some of the same words. You remember it. Yeah. Pardon me? Excitement, thank you. It carries on beyond the adventure. Yeah, exactly. What was that? You grow from it. Sure. What makes a bad adventure? Juliet in the front here said pain. Yeah, she's right. Yeah, she's right. Yeah, what makes a bad adventure? So much risk that it becomes dangerous. Yeah, a little risk is exciting, right? But so when we set out these courses, we said, look, we want to do low risk kinds of things. We're not, if you go to our website, you're going to see all kinds of higher risk types of adventures. Annually we do a more immersive leadership and CEO type thing where we take folks out to Wyoming and we do some really interesting things that are more high risk. But that's not what we're doing here, not what we're talking about at all. But we recognize what makes good leaders, bad leaders, good adventures, and bad adventures. Now, here's where you get a chance to really actively participate. There's little pieces of paper on the left side and on this side down. If you could take them and pass them down. Take 2 and pass them down. Oh, maybe take 1 and cut it in half for yourself. Just rip it in half. And you need 2. You need 2 little pieces. That's all you need, 2 little pieces. All right. Yeah, we got some big stacks we're moving around. We also have pens. If you don't have a pen, raise your hand. We'll get you a pen. Anybody need a pen? We'll get you pens. You stole them all? Okay. She already put all the pens in her purse. She said, honesty, right here in the front row. She said, actually, I stole them all. Everybody have 2 pieces of paper? If you just have 1, tear it in half. We're problem solvers here, so. Got it? Okay, so here's what I want you to do with your pen. Think of a person who in your life is or was an inspiring leader to you. Write their name on a piece of paper. We're not going to share these, by the way. This is just for you. It could have been at a point in time. It could have been in this particular project you were working on. It could be throughout your whole life. But somebody that you know who has exhibited inspiring leadership to you. Everybody got it? When you got it, you're going to take that piece of paper and you're going to put it in your right pocket. I don't have pockets. Okay. Put it in your right sleeve. Yeah. Okay? All right. Easy exercise, right? Now, the next piece of paper, think of somebody who somewhere along the way, in some project or at some point in your life, was a really uninspiring leader to you. Write their name on a piece of paper, put it in your left pocket or left sleeve. I see some of you covering what you're writing like it's the person next to you. That's all right. I've been uninspiring to people before, I know. It happens, right? Okay, we'll come back to that. So, a show of hands. You got something in your right and left pocket, right? Okay, show of hands. How many of you are leaders? Okay, almost everybody. Okay, let's go back to our definition. What is leadership? Influence, yeah. We have a set of core beliefs in our organization. One is that leadership is defined as influence. One is that every person is a leader. Every single person is a leader. So we don't subscribe to positional leadership, which says once you become a manager, then you're a leader. That's positional leadership. And there's situational leadership and authoritarian. There's all kinds of leadership, right? We subscribe to every person is a leader, and we have a test if you don't believe that. If you think I'm full of it, here's your test. If you got out of bed this morning, you're a leader of one. Okay? So you can't convince me that you're not a leader. If you got out of bed this morning, you're a leader of one, and leadership starts there, by leading yourself. So every person's a leader. We all lead in various capacities. I'm sure you can think of who views you as a leader, and becoming a better leader is an adventure. That's what our organization's built on. It's an adventure becoming a better leader. I can teach you all kinds of leadership skills, but it's the adventure of applying them in real life. You know those adventures that happen every day all throughout the conference and your everyday life where you have to apply leadership skills? Do they work every time the same way? Not exact. Sometimes they work in this situation and not in this one, right? It's kind of like with a horse, you go and get the saddle pad and you go to put it on and the horse starts walking away. Well, wait a minute, that wasn't in the book, right? Nobody said that could happen. That's the adventure. You got to figure out how to apply leadership concepts in real life. So we believe everybody can improve their leadership horsepower. And so that's what we called our courses. Our courses are unleashing your strengths-based leadership horsepower, unleashing your trust-based leadership horsepower. It's an important phrase for us because it blends into our model of helping people learn to see people in relationships differently. Then they can improve their vision, and then they can see beyond. I'm not going to go into detail in our model of building inspiring leaders. It's designed to look simple, but when you peel back the layers, there's a lot of detail here. You can stop by our booth and we can give you a 20-page document on this if you like, but there's a model that we subscribe to doing this. So we said leadership in a word is influence, and inspiring leadership is the ability to inspire and engage people to want to follow you. Okay? Pretty easy so far. How about that? Is that leader influence? No. Unfortunately, that's what a lot of people think leadership is all about. Have you ever had somebody lead you like that? Yeah. How's that feel? Mm-hmm. Okay. Now, you all been very vocal. This is normally where it gets quiet. How many of you have led somebody like that? Yeah, and thought it was the right thing at the time, and then learned, ooh, that's not going to work, right? So, I sometimes think horses think this, but. So leadership horsepower, we defined leadership, horsepower. Anybody know what the definition of horsepower is? There's a scientific definition in physics, and we've done this enough, somebody always asks what it is, and I didn't know the answer, so we had to make sure we actually put in the answer. But this is a cool graphic to show you what horsepower is. It's a unit of power. It's what it takes to pull 550 foot-pounds per second 1 foot. That's actually what horsepower, so when you're saying my lawnmower, my tractor, my truck, my chainsaw is this many horsepower, it's a unit of power. Okay, that's the science lesson for the day. There's another definition of horsepower. The second definition is called the capacity to achieve or produce something. Okay. So I've got leadership, which is influence. I've got inspiring leadership, and I've got horsepower, the ability to achieve or produce something. If I put all that together, I get what is leadership horsepower. It's the power of achieving or producing results through the influence of engaging and inspiring yourself and others. That's the premise of what we build our courses. That's the premise of what we build people around. I believe that you'll get a copy of this, so if you're writing, you'll be able to have it. It's not on there. We will find a way to get it to you. I promise. I promise. So let me tell you, what's the deal with PATH and Leadership Adventures? So we've had this winning combination. So for a couple of years, 2016, 2017, we started building these courses that leveraged horses with these leadership concepts, and we would go and we would rent PATH facilities to be able to use their facility for the day. It's a one-day workshop. We would bring in corporate people. We would conduct the training. Of course, all the PATH people were involved in anything that had to do with horses, et cetera. But then they would kind of let us go as we went into the classroom or whatever the classroom was for them. Sometimes it's a full-on classroom, and sometimes it's bales of hay sitting around in the barn. But in any case, we did that for a couple of years. And the interesting thing about that, and kind of the good model of it from a revenue perspective, is we would pay the PATH facility somewhere between $100 and $500 for their facility for the day. By the way, if you do that today, talk to me afterwards, because you can't rent the coffee in a Holiday Inn for that. So there's something wrong with that model. But anyway, that's what the going rate was. So we would pay that, and then we would leave. Leadership Adventures would leave that session with $8,000 to $10,000 in revenue. People say, how do you get people to pay that? Well, corporations are training people in leadership every day, and they're absolutely willing to spend for the value of that between $500 and $750 per person for a one-day leadership workshop, provided it's the right content. So we did this in 2016, 2017. We generated between $11,500 and $16,000 at these centers doing this with a couple of classes. You know, we had 2 classes in 2017, $8,000 a piece, $16,000. We paid the center $500. It was a good business model. The problem was this. There's a small number of us at Leadership Adventures. We couldn't go and keep doing this at all these centers. So we stepped back in our strategic planning last year and we said, what could we do with this segment of our business that actually gets these concepts out more, and at the same time, Patricia, who's over here, and some of the others on our team, we have a deep love and affection for not only horses, but the work that you guys do. I tell people when I'm part of these sessions that, you know, this is the real work in life. What I do is a different kind of work. This is the real stuff, what you guys are doing. So we're deeply passionate about the work that you do. We stepped back in our planning and said, what if we could come up with a way to package up, not all of our courses, we don't want to do this for 100 courses, if we packaged up the top 2 courses that corporations are training people on today, the most relevant leadership topics, what if we could package those up in a way, train the PATH Center people how to deliver it, so they license the material from us on an annual basis, and they essentially are keeping a big chunk of the revenue. We said, well, sounds like it'll work. Let's try it. So what we did is we got a couple of pilot centers, and we said, let's test this for a few months. We've done it for several years, but let's test it. And so Carole is one of those. Some of you who know Courtney Gramlich from Storm Harbor Equestrian Center in Pennsylvania, she was the other one. And they're both premier accredited centers, and we said let's start with premier accredited centers because it also gave us the ability to know what kind of standardization there was going to be at that center, which was important for us. So, you know, obviously we designed the courses to be primarily for for-profits and nonprofits, even though they can be used for veterans, they can be used for at-risk use or slightly adapted, but we didn't want to go into it from that angle because of a couple areas. You know, that's not our area of expertise. We're not clinical. So the at-risk youth and some of those components that require somebody with that expertise, that's not us. We do the corporate folks, so we know that space really well. And we said if we could help them bring local companies in to do this one-day workshop, those people have a lot of money to spend. And that money can be used for sustainability of the center. And the sustainability means whatever it means to you, right? So it might mean taking care of a horse for a year. It might mean providing more scholarships, and Carole will tell you a little bit more about what they're doing. So we picked 2 pilot centers, On Eagle's Wings, this is Carole's facility here, and Storm Harbor Equestrian Center, and we packaged up 2 courses, Unleashing Trust-Based Leadership Horsepower and Strengths-Based Leadership Horsepower, and we put them in a kit. And we said, okay, let's make this really easy for folks. Let's have everything from, you know, all the slideware to the brochures of how to talk to a potential client about this, to all the facilitators' notes, the exercises with the horses. We literally have it down to at 8 o'clock in the morning you do this, and at 8:15 this should be happening, and here's what the volunteers or the horse handler folks are doing, and here's what, and I want you to keep in mind a couple things that are important about this, because sometimes people have said, yeah, but I've got all this other programming going on. I don't know when I would do this. In this program, the actual time that people spend in the arena with horses is about 2.5 hours. So what we typically do is we do that right in the morning, and by 11 o'clock or so, we're back in the classroom area, and they're actually doing lessons and things in the afternoon. So what we learned through this is we can do it in a way that it doesn't impact the schedule of a center, and it can drive real revenue. So basically, we certify a center to deliver the workshops. That includes a 3-step certification process where we have to come to the center. That's the way we're doing it right now. We're actually coming to the center. We'd like to be able to get to a mode where we've got some people in a certain area and we want to do it together. We've also talked about using the regional conferences as a potential way to hold certification workshops. So we're looking for Jeff Kelling and some other folks that if you know them, point us to them, because we're still trying to catch up with them while we're here at the conference. But basically, there's a licensing that kind of gets you all this, and we've learned a lot. We've added things to this kit through it, right? So Carole will tell you a little bit about one of the things that we added was we learned that the folks at the center, they're not necessarily all that comfortable talking to people about these kinds of rates or these kinds of courses. And so we said, okay, that's okay. We'll help you do that. So we built into the package that we actually help you. We do what's called a radius analysis. So we take your center and we draw a 100-mile radius around it, and we say, let's get all the who are the companies in there? And then we have people who are what I call master marketers. And that means they go on their LinkedIn account and they know somebody who knows somebody at that company, right? And then we start calling and figuring out how to get them in. So that's a process we added in that we didn't think about in the beginning. Some centers, you may have a lot of companies in your area, big companies. Some centers, you may have a lot of small companies. We found even in small rural towns, there's still service organizations, there's still accountants, and we've had, like I said, bakery production people come through, and we've had people from the prison release program come through. We've had folks from all kinds of jobs or don't have jobs go through the sessions. So the benefits that we set out and we sought to achieve were helping you with employees, horses, programming, and infrastructure, building leaders in your community, something that there's a lot of studies on what that actually means to a community. A very interesting Forbes study talks about, basically, they did this study in 2017 that said companies that build leaders can actually double profits, right? And so you think about that from a perspective of, would you like to have those companies who are building leaders in your community? That's probably better for your center. And we sought out for for-profits, nonprofits, and then we said the courses could be tailored for the other two. So the certification, we set out, that's Carole up there actually teaching a course right there in her center. These are 8 of the original instructors. We brought 4 from one center, 4 from another. We brought them together for our 2-day certification workshop, and you can see some pictures of them working together. The other interesting thing is that there were corporate donations that through exposure started to happen. And Carole will tell you a little more about that, because it's not something we set out that we didn't anticipate, and it's not in any of the numbers that I'm telling you about, because we can't predict that. So we said, let's not tell people that's a benefit of it, because we don't know that that's going to happen in every area. But for the 2 centers where we're piloting, they've each had more than $10,000 in corporate donations in a few months, something we didn't exactly anticipate. At Storm Harbor, they had over $3,000 in the first, and this is in profit. This isn't in revenue. This is in pure profit, right? And so one of the other things we'll do is we'll get you access to, if you don't know Carole, if you don't know Courtney, we'll connect you to them so you can talk to them directly about this. This is all tied to employee engagement, so I'm not going to spend time educating on employee engagement, but this is the hottest topic right now in HR, in business, in marketing. This is Maslow's Guide to Employee Engagement. Let me give you the skinny on employee engagement. We're real bad at it in the U.S. That's the summary. 230 organizations across 70 countries. There's 2 million people in this study. Every year they do it. We're terrible. About a third of the people are engaged at work in the U.S. In fact, in 2011, it was 31%, and it's gone up so high, hasn't it? In the last one, it's 33%. And the rest, I mean, look at this. 51% of the people are not engaged. That means they're just there. They come to work, they get a paycheck, and if something better comes along, I'll leave. And so these two topics, strengths-based leadership and trust-based leadership, really focus on driving engagement. And we got a lot of data behind that to back it up. This blends in the Gallup data, Aon Hewitt data, as well as our own data as to what the benefits are. So people who are at companies that are more engaged see turnover go down. They see absenteeism go down. They see safety go down. In hospitals, they track patient safety. They see productivity go up and sales go up and profits go up. And so the cool thing about these kinds of courses is there's tons of data out there and case studies on what actually happens if you focus on employee engagement. We worked with Gartner last year, one of the major research organizations, because every year they come out with what does it cost companies lack of engagement. And 2 years ago it was $300 billion. And a year ago it was $400 billion, and now they say it's $600 billion. I don't think anybody knows. But the reality is the productivity impact by lack of engagement is huge. So what we do when we go to these companies and we try to target companies in your area to come to these sessions, the first thing we do is get a hold of somebody in HR. We say, what are you doing in the field of engagement? They say, oh, we got all these initiatives going on in engagement. Really, tell us what your last engagement scores are. Right? And we focus it from that angle. So we try to go in at the people running the company level, and that tends to be where the decisions are the fastest. So, here's one example with trust, right? With trust, people at low trust companies compared to high trust companies. Engagement called out, right? This is exactly from the Neuroscience of Trust report and the Business Case for Trust. Both very recent, but they're the same every year, the documentation in terms of what these do for engagement. So in our courses, we set out to accomplish these common ideals, like if you want to understand what it takes to be a leader, we're first going to talk to you about why people follow, because that's a whole different realm. So, people come to a leadership course, they say, here I am, teach me how to lead. You say, actually, we're going to start with how to follow, because once you learn that, we all have to lead sometimes, we all have to follow sometimes. You guys agree? Sometimes you lead, sometimes you follow. Do you know people that don't believe that? And they think they have to lead everything? Yeah. There's a good test. In leadership we say all leaders have one thing, influence. There's another test you can do. All leaders have one thing. It's called followers. So if you turn around and look over your shoulder and there's nobody following you, you might not be the leader you think you are, right? So we teach people how to start with followers. So I want to do a little activity. It's one little activity we do in the trust course, just to kind of give you a flavor of what happens in the trust course. You guys all know horses, right? Okay, resounding yes. All right, so here's what you're going to do. Turn around at your table, and your group behind you is going to be your team. And I want you guys, we're going to split up a little bit. Yeah, you guys here, you first couple of tables, you're a team, and you guys are a team. And here's what you're going to do. We're going to give you an assignment. You guys all know how to build trust with a horse, right? You all know this stuff. So I want the first groups here, you guys, so the first 3 rows on each side, I want you to talk about how you build trust with a horse using words, using spoken words. Just talk amongst yourselves, and I'll ask you for some answers. The next group back, you guys are going to talk about how you build trust with a horse through actions. Through actions. You got it? Okay? Where's the third group in the back? Right here in the blue shirt? One more back? Yes, you. Yep. You and that team, you guys are going to talk about how you build trust with a horse through the emotional connection. Through the emotional connection. And the last group, and Pat will come back and repeat this to you, how you build trust with a horse through motives, through your focus and motives. Who's it all about? You or the horse? Can you go back? We're going to take just 3 minutes. Okay, we'll take just one more minute for you to wrap up. Just come up with top 3 or 5 ideas. Okay. We'll go ahead and we'll ask you guys to regroup, kind of come back to where you were, and I'll ask each team maybe for an answer. So can we start with the first groups in the front on some things that you know you'd have to do to build trust with a horse through words? I'll repeat these, but we'll have to have everybody kind of come back to it now. Have to wrangle everybody in, right? Herding cats. Okay, thanks everybody. So we're going to start up here. Give us some examples of things you do to build trust with a horse through words. Sure, give us some examples. Good, easy, whoa. Yeah. Tone, rhythm, pitch, volume. So interesting that you're blending in not just words, but combining words with presence. Ah, okay. The words aren't consistent, but the verbal, sure. Okay, so through words or verbal, good. Any examples over here you guys want to share? Not that they didn't say. Okay, yeah, and it's a kind of a typical example, right? Because you guys all know path, and so you're using some consistent things, walk on, or word, you know, you're doing some different things, right? How about through actions? The second group's back. What kinds of ways do you build trust with a horse through your actions when you're working with a horse? Consistent, predictable actions, okay? Ah, okay, the physical touch components. Yep. Yeah, that action, sure. How about over here, anybody? Ah, okay, good. So, you know, what you're going to see, too, is there are some areas of these that bleed into each other, and that's exactly part of what has to happen, okay? So there will be some. There will also be some you might have in a category that we'd say, no, actually, that goes in another category. But keep in mind, you didn't have 3 hours of what we're going to teach people in the courses, right? So we're kind of doing this off the cuff just to give you an example of an exercise. So great examples. How about through emotions, through the emotional side? What kinds of things do you do through the emotional side? Yes. Putting our own emotions in check as well as their emotional needs, okay? Excellent. Thank you. Anybody else? Anything different? Excellent. Great. Thank you very much. How about the last category? Ways we build trust with a horse through the focus and the motives. This one's a little bit more interesting. You know, who's the focus on here? How do you make sure it's not just on you, but on the horse? You know, where are your motives? Go ahead. Yeah. Love it. Love it. Thank you. Thank you very much. Anything you guys want to add on the focus side and motives? Great. Well, you know, when you do this, and we do it typically in the groups in the afternoon, because we've just come out of working with the horse for a couple hours. We teach them in the morning how you build trust with a horse, and then we break down, okay, let's talk about let's put them in some categories. We use these 4 categories for a very specific reason that I'll explain in a minute. So the examples, these might not be the exact examples you gave, right? But they are similar types of things, or similar examples that you could look at. Ways that you use words, actions, emotions, and motives to build trust with a horse. So we look at trust as a keystone. If you don't know what a keystone is, it's the part of the arch that holds the whole arch up. So anytime you see an arch that's a real arch, there's a lot of fake arches now, but when you see a real arch, it has to have a keystone. The keystone actually does 2 things. It's the final piece placed, it locks all the stones together, and it allows the arch to bear weight. Right? Do you have relationships that have to bear weight over time? You need that foundation of trust to be able to bear the weight, right? So the reason we put them in those categories, everybody, you're probably like, where is this going? Well, it's because one of the top concepts that corporations are using today is called Meister's trust equation. It's the proven equation of how you build trust with people. So what we've done is we gave those words synonyms that I told you about earlier, how you build trust with a horse through words and through actions and so forth. Because trust is defined as credibility plus reliability plus this thing called intimacy divided by self-orientation. Now, I'm not a math major, but I can see there's 3 things on the top and 1 on the bottom. What do you know about fractions? The higher the number on the bottom, the lower the total fraction score, right? So I can have really good credibility. By the way, I'll define these. Credibility, I won't go through a lot of detail here. I'll try to be simple. It's, does somebody believe you, right? The believability you have. Reliability is, do they believe you say you're going to do what you said you're going to do? Sorry, do they believe you're going to do what you said you're going to do? Intimacy is this degree of emotional connection I have, that the person understands I'm a real person, right? And self-orientation is this more about me or the other person? So when I'm having a conversation with Juliet, by the way, how fast do you think Juliet can sniff out if the conversation we're having is all about me instead of about her? How fast do you think? Yeah, it's seconds. So everybody thinks they're a really good BS person. Just remember, people see that real fast, faster than you think. We got some interesting studies around it. So this is Meister's trust equation. We build the whole afternoon on this because they can now relate how they did some of these same things with a horse and to how they relate with people, and they remember it better. So for example, credibility is shown by the words that you use, right? It's all about truthfulness and sometimes credibility, you know, you just have because maybe you have letters after your name. Right? I walk into my doctor's office and they've got all these certificates on the wall and all these letters, and I think they have credibility, I guess, right? I mean, they must, you know? And then reliability has to be demonstrated. I have to see that you are reliable. I have to see it over and over again. And intimacy is this idea of, you know, is there some empathy and emotional safety there in discussing something with someone? And self-orientation is all about who's it really about. So there's a ton of detail we could go into that I'm not going to. You actually score yourself in each area. You pick somebody you're trying to build trust with. You score yourself in each of those areas. And we give them ways that you can actually build trust faster. You know, we even get into things like the presence. You talked about presence up front when you talked about words and credibility. I think it was you, sorry. But, you know, the idea of your presence and how fast judgments are made with people. So in 5 seconds... in 20 seconds, people have made 10 assumptions about you. This is from a study out of Finland, right? And look at one of them, trustworthiness. In 20 seconds, people have already judged if you're trustworthy or not. We all do it. It happens, right? It's the way it works. We teach them about handshakes. By the way, we built this module in, and we thought for executives, they would always want to skip over it. It's one of the most requested ones with executives and C-level people. Can you review for us handshakes? Do you guys know why we do a handshake? Yeah. Yeah. Handshake is the original trust but verify. The original handshake, Antiochus from 30 BC, right? The original handshake is what? Can I borrow it? Can you come up here for a second? This is the original handshake, everybody. And then the other hand. I don't have another hand to do it with, right? Okay. Why? Because that's where you kept a dagger. That's where you kept a dagger. Also, that would be where you could tell if somebody had disease, if their arms were, if the flesh was. So it was two things, okay? And we still do it today in every interaction. We don't even know why. It's the original trust. So we teach them that. We also teach them where to focus and how to build these things. And we do all that through scoring and a job aid. The job aid's really fun because we give them this one job aid. It's a one-pager. You can't see it here, but if you want a copy, come by our booth. We'll give you a copy of this. It basically says, here's 5 quick ways you can build credibility with a person. Here's 5 quick ways you can demonstrate reliability. 4 or 5 ways you can increase intimacy and lower your self-orientation. We give them this card, and we put them on the hot seat in the afternoon. So we actually pull them up in twos. You say, okay, you and you, come on up here, sit here. You're now going to have a conversation in front of all of us on one of these topics. Scenario 1, this employee repeatedly misses their due dates. And they say, what do you mean? And we say, curtain up, have a conversation. Let's see how it goes. All you can use is your job aid on trust. Have a trusted conversation. It's a really interesting thing. You really get to the heart of it, you know. This colleague got promoted and this one didn't. Or we actually tailor these sometimes for the corporation. They'll say, well, I'm really trying to work on this with our people. We'll put that in as one of the scenarios. Of course, everybody likes scenario 5. One colleague has been reported by several for excessive body odor. Right? And it's real interesting when you put 2 strangers together and you say, now have a trusted conversation around this. They always have the same question. Which one of us stinks? You know. The strengths course, I don't know how many of you are using or are familiar. Anybody put your hand up if you know what Clifton Strengths Finder is. Yeah, we want to get you to know what this is real fast. You know why? 90% of the Fortune 500 use Clifton Strengths Finder. There's 20 million people that have taken the strengths assessment. It basically is an online assessment you take, and it tells you what your top strengths are. We blend that with horses' top strengths. So it's a similar course like the trust one, but it's based on strengths. Our course is different because it's actually Gallup approved. The folks at Gallup in Omaha, Pat and I were just there in July. We meet with them. They've seen our course. They love it. We're the only one that's blending strengths with horses that's actually in a Gallup approved manner because we developed it with Gallup strengths coaches. I'm going to skip over some things so we can get some more time to talk. So bear with me. You can see more of that. By the way, you think strengths is relevant? Here's 3 companies you might know of that think strengths is relevant. The first one's a quote from the COO of Facebook. The next one is Microsoft Europe, and the third one is a company called Rackspace, all talking about strengths. You can see this when I send you the PowerPoint. I'm going to skip over these and just showing you the kinds of things we do in the course and how it relates to horses, talents to strengths, what are strengths of a horse, how that relates to strengths of people, examples of things you might do, how you go from talents to strengths. This is the speed version. By the way, the other interesting thing we do is folks take the strengths assessment up front, and then we get their results. We compile the results, and we get it to the center so that as they teach, we know already who has what strengths, which is real cool in terms of how to put people together. And we help them understand that you have to leverage all the crayons. None of us has all of the, all the strengths, right? I do some things in a different way. I have natural abilities that might be a little different than yours. That's my thumbprint. It's very unique to me. And so how do we ensure that people don't look at the beach ball like that, but they look at the beach ball like this, which means I need all the stripes, right? I need all the crayons in the box. And so strengths-based inspiring leaders do that. And they don't paint like this. Do you know any artists like this? What's wrong with this artist's paintings? What's wrong with this artist's paintings? Yeah, everything has what my strengths are in the forefront. So boy, if only you could have more of the things I have, life would be so much better, right? And now what you're probably starting to see is the combination and the tie between strengths and trust we talked about earlier. So many of the clients do strengths and they do both courses because Strengths is a great way to build that intimacy part of trust, to help us understand we all bring unique strengths, and the ability to leverage those is where the power is. So let me stop on the courses, tell you real quick some of the numbers that we've seen in the pilots with the centers, and Carole's going to talk about that too. So when we were doing this on our own, we were generating about between $1,000 and $1,300 a month in a center, right? Pretty substantial, nice number, $10,000, $12,000 a year. We hit 16 in a couple of years, et cetera. When we started doing it with the PATH centers in 2018, this is just over a few months, we were in the $1,500 to $1,800 range per month, right? So those are real numbers that I can tell you all day, but I want you to talk to Carole and Courtney about, because we believe this is a way for centers to get away from that old model of charging $100 for somebody to rent their center. Why not give your people a new career path? Teach companies in your area build better leaders. Teach them what they're already paying somebody to learn about, and do it in a way that has a payback curve. You might not like the fancy payback curve, but I'll guarantee you your board does. So we love to go and talk to the boards because this is what they want to know. We designed all of this, and we're showing that it pays back by month 6. All we have to do is have one class in your center. The kit pays for itself for the year, right? One class total. Yeah. Yeah, a typical class is somewhere between $7,500 and $10,000. Yeah, yeah. It's one class. We can do whatever we want, right? So the bottom line is, we developed this, branded it as Equine Assisted Leadership Development, because we called the folks here at PATH and we said, is anybody doing, there's people doing these different kinds of leadership things, and we said, no, nobody's going to do it like this. We're going to have this packaged in a way that is so easy for people to do. We can train them how to do it, and they can actually get a ton of benefits. I want Carole to tell you about 3 of the lessons learned from the pilots, and whatever else you want to tell them, Carole.
Thanks, Jeff. Jeff kind of alluded to this, but I did get a phone call a couple years ago from a man saying his name was Jeff, and that he would like to rent our facility, just like the story he's telling you. And I said, well, Jeff, it's just a bunch of sticks right now. We were in the process of building a facility where we could host a workshop before we were a backyard operation like a lot of us started out with. So, of course, I said sure, even though I'm looking at sticks. And he actually came by eventually, we agreed to a date, and he said, are you sure it's going to be ready by that date? And I'm going, oh, sure, contractors always do what they're supposed to do, blah, blah, blah. And by gosh, they did, and we were able to host a workshop. And I knew nothing about Jeff and the program other than it sounded cool. We had horses. We were PATH Premier Center. I thought, well, we can do this. And he was going to give us a little money like he said. But as it went on and we sat through the workshop, the initial one he did, I realized, oh, my gosh, I need this. We were building a big facility. We were trying to hire people. I realized that I may not have been a very good leader because I didn't feel like a leader at that point. I've evolved into it. But I think a lot of it was due to the workshops that we've had hosted at our center, and that I've learned a lot about myself, my style of leadership. I've learned a lot about my employees, the engagement that, that we have with them at our center. The biggest plus here is about the program is that it's really literally unleashing a lot of opportunities in our community to introduce ourselves to corporations, to major companies in an area that we had no access to, and it's made us rethink how to do our development, basically, through a way that's actually very conducive to what we're already set up to do at our centers, and in a way that really does help a lot of people. And you reach people in your community that normally you would never reach. You would never get to your center to get involved. And it's been amazing the feedback we've gotten from community members. But the big piece for me as an executive director is the piece that's added to our sustainability. So if we do, like Jeff's teaching us how to do the hustle, how to get people in there, how to talk to people, I've learned a whole new skill set that I didn't even know I had. The biggest plus is the income that we received in the pilot program. I've been able to hire a part-time employee. So for people that, that seems to be an ongoing problem in our industry, is how to pay our employees, how to keep them in our program. And so by Jeff's program turning me into a better leader, I've turned into a better employer and being able to provide jobs in our area. So, so from the initial phone call a couple years ago, we've turned into an extreme advocate of this program. We're going to be, I believe us and Storm Harbor will be the first two people to be licensed to provide this programming in this coming year, and Jeff will tell you a little bit more about those numbers, but we're going to purchase a license to provide this at our center, and it will be up to us, and they will help the people from Leadership Adventures, get contracts with the people that we want to serve in this capacity. So we're really excited about it. And yes, we did. Just right around their fundraising time, we got a $10,000 corporation donation based on being involved in this project. So very exciting. Thank you, Jeff.
Good. Thanks, Carole. So there's a couple things real quick I have to tell you before we go, because I knew we'd run out of time, right? Remember I told you I was going to give you, at the end of the session, the 2 top secrets of becoming a more inspiring leader? Remember that part? Here they are. You ready? Write this down. The person's name in your right pocket. Do more of that. The person's name in the left pocket. Stop doing that. That's as much as I can give you there. You can stop by our booth. We're in 102. The presentation, if you send us an email at info@myleadershipadventures.com, I think it's on the dollar bills that Pat's giving you, we will get you the presentation. It might be a link to a Dropbox or something, but you'll be able to get it. And we'll see if we can track down folks here at this conference to get it on the site. It's info@myleadershipadventures.com. It's a long one. Yeah. Yeah, we're giving the $100 bills out because it's a reminder for centers that you're leaving money on the table. So thanks, everybody. Really appreciate it.